We're here to do some old numbers that you all know and love, and some numbers from our new album, The Vertical Man, which I hope you will get to know and love. Anyway, we're going to start with a couple of good ones so you can all join in if you feel like it. And the first one goes like this.
Do you know how the use of insecticides has resulted in more and more demand for the product? Do you know what part natural control still plays in the war against insects? Do you know whether a sundial always tells the right time, or why the beginning of each season does not always come on the same day each year? You may also want to know how far a ship can list and still right itself. Let's turn now to your science reporter, Howard Tupper, who has been talking to Dr. W.E. Dove, Director of Entomological Research for the U.S. Industrial Chemicals Company.
Dr. Dove was acquainting me with the situation in what he calls this new age of insecticides.
To be perfectly accurate, Tup, I think we ought to recognize that man has been battling insects in one way or another for countless centuries.
Yes, but we've come a long way from trying to smother insects with smoke or primitive smudge pots. For the most part, we are depending on chemicals as insecticides.
That's been going on for a number of years now, Tup. Do our insecticide needs seem to be reaching a stabilization point?
No, and it's hard to know when they will. First, and most obviously, we must remember that research in the field is going on constantly. As improvements are made, demand will mount. But an interesting additional point that Dr. Dove brought out is that the use of insecticides is directly responsible for an increased need.
Do you mean that you need more to do the job?
No, the job increases. The need is based on the volume of crops. But the volume of crops keeps increasing as insect damage is eliminated.
I never thought much about it in that way, but it surely couldn't have been too much of a surprise to those working in the insecticide field.
To some extent it was, though, Bill. Dr. Dove told me that the increased yields of crops suggest that insects were causing greater damage than previous estimates had indicated.
Has this widespread use of chemicals against insects made that the cheapest way of controlling them?
No, and Dr. Dove was very careful to emphasize that point. He said, first of all, that natural control is the cheapest method for control of pests. And in addition, he told me that because natural control plays a bigger role than most of us realize, one of the big problems is killing the insects without affecting their natural enemies.
Do you mean that some of the insects and also some of their enemies would be killed, but that the remaining insects would multiply faster than their enemies?
Exactly. Nature's biological balance would be upset.
Did Dr. Dove give you any examples of control by natural enemies?
Yes, a good many. I won't enumerate them right now, but I want to make sure I'm not giving you the wrong impression, Bill. Just as Dr. Dove wanted to emphasize the importance of natural control to guard against any idea of using chemicals exclusively, he also wanted to show the role that each must play.
In other words, make sure we're not interfering with the friendly parasites and predators, and then help them along with chemical insecticides.
Right.
Well, what are some of the other general precautions which have evolved?
Dr. Dove quoted Dr. Clausen of the University of California as feeling that insecticides of botanical origin are less likely than any others to be toxic to the insect's natural enemies. Rotenone, pyrethrum, and nicotine, to name a few, seem to kill only the adult parasites. The parasites emerging after the treatment are able to survive.
I'm all for being kind to the parasites which seem to be on our side, but what about precautions against materials which are toxic to human beings?
Dr. Dove said that a number of the newer insecticides, which are toxic to animals, can't be used around foods, feeds, food crops, food processing plants, or as direct animal sprays.
That just about eliminates all possible applications.
Oh, no. They can still be used on fiber and other non-edible crops, and in many other ways. Some of them can be used on fresh fruits and vegetables, but not within 60 days before the harvest.
Is there any way to be sure that such rules are being followed?
Yes. Dr. Dove said the Food and Drug Administration and the Meat Inspection Service of the Department of Agriculture are on the alert for any evidence of food contamination.
Well, Tup, I want to thank you for this review of your discussion with Dr. W.E. Dove of U.S. Industrial Chemicals Company. Any of our listeners who would like a copy of Dr. Dove's paper on insecticides can have it merely by writing to Excursions in Science and asking for Science Paper 566. That same address is the one to use when sending along questions for us to answer. All of our listeners' questions will be referred to the General Electric Research Laboratory or some other authoritative organization. Each question will be answered by mail, and some with general interest will be discussed on future programs. Our first question comes from a listener who has heard that nothing is really solid. The explanation he has heard is that the nuclei and other parts of the atoms take up a very small amount of room, leaving mostly empty space between them.
That's true, but it's a little difficult to explain.
Well, our listener isn't asking for an explanation of that. He's just interested in knowing how something like lead can stop atomic radiations.
Well, it is true, as our listener suggests, that even solid matter is mostly empty space. However, the space between the electrons and nuclei that make up matter has strong electric, magnetic, and other field force properties. It is these electric and other fields that deflect or transform radiations, since lead has very heavy atomic
removal of calcium. No. While calcium is essential to a balanced diet, we get very small amounts at best from the water. It is present in most fruits and vegetables, and milk products are excellent sources of this element. In many places, the water is naturally soft and contains little or no calcium. Even in these regions, calcium deficiency is no problem as long as people have a normal, varied diet.
Right now, we're going to let our listeners' programmed diet become a little more varied, Tup. It's time for us to end this visit. I don't want to leave, of course, without reminding our listeners that copies of Dr. Dove's paper on insecticides are available to all who will write Excursions in Science in care of this station, asking for Science Paper 566. Use that same address when sending along questions for us to answer. Now, this is Bill Carpenter
And Howard Tupper,
saying goodbye until the next transcribed Excursions in Science.
Chevrolet, a choicer choice, there can't be. Come to your Chevrolet dealer, 66. Chevrolets are something to see. Now at your Chevrolet dealer, 66. For a new jet smoother ride, turn first to Chevrolet. Make a choice, sir, big car choice. At your Chevrolet dealer, 66. Make a choice, sir, big car choice. At your Chevrolet dealer, 66.
Hey, everybody, please turn your seats. Have a big hand for Thomas for saving the day. Thank you, Thomas. All right, Casey and Thomas, let's get these folks over back to town, please.
Like I said, anything can happen out here in the Wild West. Thanks for your help, Thomas. That was a close call. Listen, let's head back before anything else goes haywire.